Hello, everybody. I just want to say this video is very special to me because Cowboy Bebop is very special to me. So I hope you enjoy the video. As always, if you want to check out the video in the original format, in the original way that I intended it, then you can check it out over on Patreon for all Patreon supporters. As always, link down below. It's not mandatory. It's just a way I can give back to people that want to support me in the channel. As always, I hope you enjoy the video. Cowboy Bebop has been every hipster's and pretentious art snob's choice for favorite anime since it was released. So is it any wonder that it's my personal favorite anime? Created by Shinichiro Watanabe, who also went on to create Samurai Champloo and Space Dandy, Cowboy Bebop stands as a melting pot of different genres that comes together to tell the incoherent stories of Spike, Jet, Faye, Ed, and Ein, as they drift through the stars in search of their next bounty. Part Western, part sci-fi, part noir, part jazz concert, part mobster film, part murder mystery, part tragedy, Cowboy Bebop mixes a lot of ideas together. And somehow, it mixes all of them with proportions that just work. It truly is fascinating to watch, as you never really know what to expect from the next episode. A lot of people, myself included at one point, don't really get the point of Cowboy Bebop or why it's so special. So they see it as an okay show that gets a lot of undue hype and praise. And you are free to interpret the show that way. But how I interpreted this show was a story of people unable to move on with their lives, drifting from day to day without meeting until their pasts catch up to them each in turn. Look, what I hope to do with this video is to help you guys appreciate the show in a way that you might have not before. Convince people that are still on the fence about watching it or not to go and watch it, and to convey just how damn much I love this show. Also, I should say there are spoilers ahead, because it is impossible to talk about the point of the show without talking about the plot. Told as a collection of short, self-contained stories, the show generally follows a set structure. The crew of the Bebop receives a bounty. They go on a mission for said bounty. Complications happen. Something goes horribly wrong. Target usually either dies or the crew has a change of heart. They don't get the reward, and they end up back on their ship right where they started. And it all gets tied up with a nice little bow and a title card saying, "See you, Space Cowboy." And that end title card is so important. Now, when you boil it down to its base elements like that, it can be a little bit dangerous because you might miss the point of the show and some spooky shit can happen, like misinterpreting what the show is about. And that's when you get things like the Netflix reboot.
Spooky! The attack of the horrible alien!
But what is the point? Unlike most shows, the stories of our main cast have, for the most part, already happened. Jet was double-crossed and lost faith in the ISSP, leaving the police force to become a bounty hunter. Faye was put into cryosleep until a cure could be found for her, and after she awoke, she had no memories and a massive debt to pay. Ed was abandoned at a young age and had to learn how to fend for herself. And Spike was a grizzled hitman inside of the Red Dragon Syndicate. And then he fell in love, made a daring escape from the syndicate, faked his own death, and then was betrayed by the one he loved. Any of these plot lines would be the main focus of any respectable normal show, but here, that's all in the past. These events have already happened by the time we catch up to our crew on the Bebop. Now we see our crew going on quote-unquote meaningless one-off stories, but the thing is, the more that you watch, the more you realize that, simply put, these stories aren't meaningless, and at some point, you're gonna have to carry the weight of your experiences. All of our characters are drifting through space, both physically and mentally, and while they don't like to admit it, these adventures leave their mark on the crew, and it has impacts on how they deal with their own pasts. And speaking of the past, the Bebop just so happens to be the place where all of them will have to face the sweet, sweet jazz music-filled past one way or another. Cowboy Bebop has two different types of episodes. One-off episodes, such as leaving a lobster in the fridge for so long it becomes sentient, and then picks off the crew one by one alien style. And big episodes, where every character must face their past each in turn, or be consumed by it. For Jet, it's a Ganymede elegy where he must face the lover that scorned him. Faye has a vital moment in Speak Like a Child, realizing that she's lost who she was. During the song Call Me, we see the experiences of all of the crew being concluded, including Ed and Nine, and a penultimate climax for everyone. Everyone except for Spike, who, well, you know what? We'll just come back to him later. Considering that these key episodes are vital for understanding the whole point of Cowboy Bebop, let's dissect them and find out why they work so well. Starting with Jet is the dad of the group. Calm, level-headed, and really the glue that keeps Spike and Faye from killing one another. Jet has a couple of different aliases that encapsulate him as a character: Running Rock and the Black Dog. While Jet seems to be standing in one place, he's actually actively running from his past, hence the name Running Rock. As for the other, the Black Dog, who once he bites doesn't let go, well, we have to go a little bit more into it. Jen likes to play it off as though nothing from his past bothers him. However, this facade is exposed when they bring a bounty back to the satellite where he's from, and he goes off to meet with his old love, Alyssa. We find out that Alyssa left Jet with seemingly no reason. Just walked out one day before he came home from work, leaving only a stopwatch and a note saying farewell. Jet kept that stopwatch until it broke. And for him, that stopwatch literally represents that time for him has frozen. He's reliving that day again and again and again, unable to get closure. He doesn't let go. But for everyone else, they've moved on. Alyssa is seeing someone new and has plans to leave the planet with him. And as it turns out, there's a bounty on Alyssa's new love, Rint. You see, Alyssa borrowed money from a loan shark, and Rint, well, he accidentally kills him. Spike starts the chase, but Jet wants to do things his way. Spike is skeptical at first, but then is reminded by Jet of his old nickname from back when he was on the ISSP. This is a personal chase for Jet. In a way, he's chasing down his past and ending that part of his life. It's a sobering moment in the show, and it's shown through the music. Equal parts comforting, sad, nostalgic, and remorseful, it perfectly showcases the conflicting emotions in the scene as we cut between the people at play. Jet, cold, emotionless, the black dog that doesn't let go. Rint, panicked and desperate to escape, and Alyssa, defeated. Almost like she's accepting her fate. Jet personally handles bringing Rint in, and in a final confrontation, Alyssa tells Jet why she left. She felt suffocated, like she couldn't have her own life because Jet wouldn't let go. The episode ends on a lighter note, with Rint most likely getting off on a self-defense charge, and Jet finally letting go. He nonchalantly walks away, and when he finds the stopwatch in his pocket, he laughs to himself, and he throws it in the river, signifying that he's ready for time to start again. Is it a bit on the nose? Sure. But sometimes it's nice to have stories that have obvious metaphors and resolutions. Jet has another run-in with his past later on in the show, but now because he's allowed time to flow through him, he's better equipped to deal with the situation. Overall, Jet has a healthy acceptance of his past and deals with it in a mature and responsible way. On the complete opposite side of that coin, we have our lovely Faye Valentine. Faye is a little bit of an enigma. She plays it cool as a femme fatale, for most of the show at least. But we quickly find out that she's desperate to know anything about the person that she was before she was cryogenically frozen. She comes close a couple of times, but nobody seems to know who she truly is. Until a mysterious package shows up for her. Jet and Spike go on a fun little adventure to find a beta deck to play the tape, but the episode ends in one of the most haunting moments of the show.
Huh?
Good morning, me. Did you sleep well? Well, knowing me, I'm sure you're causing all kinds of trouble for lots of different people. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. Remember, I'll always be cheering you on. And now a big cheer from my heart. Let's go! Me! Don't you lose! Don't you lose! Me!
Don't lose me. A message from a young Faye to her future self. A message that Faye has no memory of.
I can't remember.
No memory of the girl in the video. What was intended to be a lighthearted cheer has taken on a completely different meaning. She's lost her memory.
Don't you lose! Don't you lose! Me!
She's lost her past.
Go me!
She's lost her.
Don't you lose! Don't you lose! Me!
She's lost.
Yay!
Faye is haunted by what she sees and takes actions to find her past. But sometimes it's best not to find what you're looking for. Faye tracks down one of the locations seen in the video footage, and as fate would have it, actually runs into somebody that was in her high school graduating class, only to find that time has flowed. She's a grandmother, and well beyond Faye in physical age. But she has a home, a family, a place to belong. Faye panics and runs back to the comfort of the ship, but while there, she finally remembers. She remembers what she lost as her memories flood back to her. The accident, the freeze, her family, her home where she belongs. She frantically races back to where she belongs, her old home. And Faye finds her home, only to find out that there's nothing there. Her old home has been razed to the ground with only a fountain still standing. Faye's story culminates with the song Call Me alongside Ed and Ein, so let's take a quick detour and catch up with those two and then circle back. Edward joins the crew as a bit of a misfit, a kid with a massive intelligence but also half feral. She has no past. We know nothing about her, and nothing seems to bother her. She is a complete whiplash in tone from the rest of the crew, outside of Ein, that is. The data dog that is hyper intelligent, but is also still a dog and can't speak. The duo is so drastically different from the rest of the crew. Zany, carefree, and completely off the wall. I initially hated them. I was so annoyed by their antics and thought they were the worst part of the show. But then something happened. They became a constant in the show. Since the two weren't tied down by their pasts, they offered something different to the rest of the crew that I think they needed. Things all change when Edward runs into her father. As it turns out, her father is a complete airhead that abandoned her at an orphanage at a young age. When he pops back up again and offers for her to come back to him, he immediately gets distracted and leaves again. And that's when we finally come back around to Call Me. As the music begins, we see Ed give Spike a pinwheel, and Ein senses what's going on. Ein gets torn between staying with the crew and chasing after Edward, but he chooses to chase down Ed. Jet looks around the ship after making food for everyone to find no one, and eventually finds Spike on the bridge overlooking the deck of the ship, where Ed's adorable goodbye message has been scrawled onto. We see Faye despondent as she realizes that holding out hope for her past was futile. Her past is gone. The moment that crushes me is when she draws out where her bed once was and lays down looking at the fading sunset while Call Me builds in the background, highlighting her despair and longing for a place to belong in the universe. And meanwhile, we see Ed and I reunite and run off to live their new lives as two shooting stars fall overhead as a subtle callback to Jupiter Jazz. And then we see Jet and Spike wordlessly eat all of the eggs that Jet had made for everyone, now gone. Eating slowly at first and not even looking at each other or saying anything, only to eat more and more frantically as if to stop the pain that they are both feeling as the rest of their crew has left them. As the chorus of the song kicks in and the emotional weight of everything just hits you, as the last image that you see of the episode ends is the pinwheel that Ed had given to Spike haphazardly attached to the front of the Bebop. And you realize how much Ed and Ein meant to the show, meant to the crew, and meant to you. But you never know what you love until it leaves, I guess. Now we come to the main character of our story.
Spike.
Spike!
You're the one, aren't you? You're Spike.
Spike!
Spike.
The guy with the fuzzy hair.
Can't you just say you're looking for Spike?
Spike Spiegel likes to keep to himself, and he carries himself as a suicidal stoic. A prime example of what I mean by this is the scene of Spike calmly sitting in his ship while plummeting uncontrollably to the ground, nonchalantly lighting a cigarette and uttering the now infamous,
We can't live
Oh, well.
without them. I knew I should've
Whatever
come up here.
happens,
I'm only 18.
happens.
I don't wanna die.
Spike is constantly shown as only having interest in something if there is an element of risk involved. A simple hacker bounty? Couldn't care less. A suicidal mission to disarm a satellite in an asteroid field, dodging rock, laser fire, and automated defensive systems to get close enough to disable it.
Now this is the kind of stuff I like. Let's do it.
Spike is drifting, claiming he's already died once. We see him constantly moving towards life-endangering situations just to feel something, to see if he's alive. Much like his colleagues, Spike's story only moves forward when his past catches up to him and gets involved. Or rather, I should be more specific and say, when Vicious gets involved. Once his partner in the syndicate, we see the two collide with each other on a number of different occasions, and each time, Spike faces him with the intention of dying his final death. What I find fascinating is that Spike never pushes his own plot forward. He has truly given up on living. He's resigned himself to this stasis of drifting through time and space forever. Until Julia. When Spike learns that he's being targeted by the Red Dragon Syndicate now that Vicious has taken control, he doesn't care less. That is until he hears that Julia is also being targeted. Until this point in the show, Julia has been a phantom from Spike's past that not much has been revealed beyond a few sparse scenes. But now, Spike is finally ready to face that part of his past. We get the full story of what happened between Spike, Vicious, Julia, and the Syndicate. How Spike left after one final job. How Julia was ordered to kill him. And why Spike has been drifting for so long. In the midst of these revelations, Jet confronts Spike with a story.
Have you heard this story?
Huh?
Jet has already faced his past. And looking back, he realizes he was so fixated on holding on to how things were, he was unable to live and unable to move on. He pleads with Spike to let go, to move on. But Spike can't. And Jet recognizes this. And instead of continuing to plead and fight with him, he encourages him to go and find his other half. In a way, I feel like Jet knew Spike better than anyone. He knew how much his blessing meant to Spike, and he knew that Spike would never let go. Just like him. It all comes to a climax with Julia and Spike being reunited. And for the briefest of moments, we hold out hope that everything will end happily. That some things are just meant to be no matter what. And that in the end... we don't hear Julia's last words. And the sudden whiplash of the moment pulls us out of the action sequence that precedes it. What was once an episode filled with a hopeful crescendo shatters. The episode becomes still. Spike ends up back on the Bebop, just like every other time after a routine bounty. But this time, Spike tells Jet a story instead.
Ever heard this story?
Huh?
The two share one final joke and laugh, and then Jet rips out all of our hearts with a question.
Hey, Spike.
Yeah?
I just want to ask you one thing.
What's that?
Is it for the girl?
He knows Spike is going to die his final death. He knows that this is Spike saying goodbye, and he doesn't stop him. Unexpectedly, Faye is the one that tries to stop him instead. Faye realizes that her place of belonging was with the ragtag family she found on the Bebop, with Ed, Ein, Jet, and yes, even Spike. But when she comes back to the Bebop, she finds Jet shot, Ed and Ein gone, and Spike leaving on an assisted suicidal mission. It's the second time that she's had her home ripped away from her, and this scene chills me every time.
Why are you going?
She already knows why he's leaving. She knows where he's going, but she begs him to stay all the same. We finally see Spike's depression rear its head for the first time as he tells her.
I felt like I was watching a dream I'd never wake up from.
Spike knew that he was drifting. He knew that he was floating without volition through space, unable to let go of his past. And that line, that final line.
I'm not going there to die. I'm going to find out if I'm really alive. I have to do it, Faye.
He feels like in order for his life to have purpose, he has to find out if the choices that he made were worth it. Looking out over the desert and seeing the mountain that he was traveling to, he just wants to know it was worth it in the end. Him leaving the others behind hurts. This scene devastates me every time. The cold realization of losing her new family slowly creeping over Faye as she collapses in the hallway. Jet pointlessly cleaning the ship another time, as it's now the only thing that he has left to cling to. Spike tells Vicious of Julia's death and says that he intends to end things. And things do come to an end. They come to an end for Julia, for Vicious, for Spike, and for us. We find out what Julia's last words were.
It's all a dream.
And the last thing that we hear is Spike's final word, ending the dream.
Bang.
Remember how I mentioned the title card and the end of the episode being important? I didn't understand the point of Cowboy Bebop when I first watched it, and I didn't particularly like it. I had heard all of these people hyping it up for so long, and when I finished it, I thought, well, that was okay, I guess, and went about my day-to-day life. That is until about a month later, when I found myself with a deep longing to return to the Bebop, to spend more time with Jet, Spike, Faye, and yes, even Ed and Ein, who at first I thought they were just annoying. I missed them. So I watched the show again, and it hit a little bit harder that second watch through. A few months passed, and the longing returned. I watched it again, if only just to spend a few more minutes with the crew, and that's when I realized the point of the show. You see, throughout the show, we see all of these short stories that have life or death, or at the very least, life-altering situations for all of the people involved. All of the people minus our main cast. The whole point of all of these stories is that the crew of the Bebop is merely watching them unfold before them. These stories don't affect them to any great significance. Most of the time, we see these life-altering stories of people dying, sicknesses being cured, killing people trapped outside of the plane of reality. Yes, that really happens in the show. But at the end of the day, the crew remains unaffected. Back on the ship, no money for food, just another day drifting. Or so we think. While the show doesn't have a traditional overarching story that we constantly get updated on each episode, we see our crew go through these one-off adventures, and little by little, we watch them grow. And we watch them change until a big episode hits them. And in those big hitting episodes, their stories unfold as we, the audience, take on the place that the crew has so often had. Watching. When the crew deals with their own pasts, the episodes have a very different feel and tone to them. And to hammer them home even more, they have a different end card than the standard "See You Space Cowboy." Well, except for Jet. When Spike faces his past during Jupiter Jazz, we get "Do You Have a Comrade?" A double meaning for both Gren in the episode and Spike moving forward. When Faye finds out where she belongs is different than what she thought, as well as Ed and Ein leaving the crew to start their new lives, we see "See You Cowgirl, Someday, Somewhere," pertaining to both of them. And finally, as the roles are changed around one final time, we see the end of Spike, Jet, Faye, the story of the Bebop. We are left with one final message. You're gonna carry that weight. The point of Cowboy Bebop isn't that it's a show that has a bunch of smart setups and payoffs that all culminate in a climactic final scene that blows your mind. It doesn't have incredible character growth arcs that send us on a roller coaster of emotions with our cast. It really doesn't follow many, if any, conventional writing rules, and in theory, this should be a mediocre show that just coasts off nostalgia and it being a good show for the time. But Cowboy Bebop doesn't do that. Those insignificant one-off stories are some of my favorite stories of all time. Asteroid Blues sets up expectations for the show perfectly, with a wonderful mix of fun action, great storytelling, heart-wrenching moments, and that damn ending. Ending right where they started. In Waltz for Venus, watching a brother do bad things to save his dying sister. Asking for mentorship from Spike and ultimately showing how good his heart really is by trying to save a complete stranger. Culminating in Spike using the rewards from the adventure for medicine for the sister, so she can heal. Ending in a final gut punch of a line, as we then watch Spike walk outside and look up at the snow, or rather the pollen that caused the illness for the sister in the first place. And in Jupiter Jazz, we see a good man who held on to his ideals for so long, only to watch them slowly crumble. And now as we catch up to him in the episode, he's resigned and accepted his fate. He helps Faye with profound insight and advice, and ending the big episode in an incredibly moving scene where we see past the stoic, apathetic facades of Gren, Spike, Faye, and Jet, as we see them all for who they truly are. and we see the unspoken bonds that tie the crew together. Cowboy Bebop is a show that gives you a story and a feeling unlike anything else I have ever experienced. It gives you a story of friends, lost love, bonds, laughter, living life to the fullest, grief, sorrow, facing your past, and not being afraid of welcoming death. It shies away from typical stories and instead shows us what would have been the footnotes of most tales. And because of that, when it ends, it leaves you with this pang in your soul. A yearning just to spend another day with the crew. The show leaves you with this feeling and weight as it expects you to carry the stories of Spike, Jet, Faye, Ed, Ein, the Bebop with you until your story ends and you pass it on to another. Or as the show says, you're gonna carry that weight.